Hi everyone, it's 8 p.m. and we're ready to start. Um, we have an exciting session for you today. We'll be looking at creating a rate card. So there's a few things that goes into that, and I've prepared something short just to teach you about how to do that. So this is the first video of the series, The Conduit, and the reason why we're doing this series is to give people that missing piece. So sometimes you find that you know how to do something and you're good at it, but there's just one small part that sometimes you don't have the access to. And usually this is something you can learn or something you can buy. And lucky for you, in this first video, this is something that's easy to learn. There's quite a few things packed into this lesson today. We'll dive deep into creating a rate card, what's the process that goes into it. We'll look at what kind of practitioners we have and how each of them have a different kind of rate card. And then hopefully we get to learn something, and hopefully this changes how we do things and makes an impact in terms of how sustainable our creative skills can be in terms of creating an income, creating a living as well. So we'll just keep taking a few minutes to allow some people to join. I do have some help in the room, so once Paul sees that we have a few people, we're happy to start. Feel free to engage me on the comments. I hope everything is visible, the audio is good, the video is good. Let me know, speak to me. But yeah, we do have an exciting session. Exciting if you like to learn. So I know this is Saturday night. And if you're here, thanks for being here. I don't know what you're doing here. But hopefully I make it worth your time and let you have the rest of your Saturday evening, which I'm also excited to get into. So Paul, do we see anything on the comments so far?
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you for doing this.
Nice.
That's Karen Rita and writer. There's also Nikki Rax in it. I see you, man.
Amazing.
There's a couple of people in, so I think we should give them a few more minutes.
Okay. Okay, a few more minutes. So nice. I guess I'm meant to give you a story. Okay, so what I want with the Conduit is, like I said, to give you the missing piece. Maybe I can share a bit about why we have this name, the Conduit. Well, Paul here is an engineer, and when I told him about the name, he just didn't get it. So what do you mean? Do you understand what Conduit means? Was the first question. So, well, in my layman English, I understand it to mean like a passageway or something that allows things to flow, creates a passage for things to flow. So that could be a passage for electric cables. It could be a part where you join the pipes for water to flow. Sometimes your pipe is really straight and you need it to maneuver, a different kind of building maybe. And you need like a piece that changes the flow, right? So that's the reason why we went into naming it Conduit. So this will be a series of learnings, just giving you that missing piece. And to me, in this session, teaching you how to create a rate card is that missing piece. How are we doing, Paul?
I've got 13 people.
Nice.
So what do you
Yeah, I think I'm ready to start. Oh my God. Let's get into it. Okay, so we are 5 minutes past 8. The time is amazing, and the attendance is great. So I'll get right into it. So creating a rate card. Like I said, this is what we're looking at today. So let's start by reflecting on some of my experiences in creating in seeing other people's rate cards. When you're looking through rate cards, you'll notice some people dig deep into what the problem was. you'll notice that, okay, Paul, the doorbell just rang, so you should go check that out. Sorry for the interruption. Yeah, so when I see some of these rate cards, I start to learn a few things. Number one is some people don't go that deep into uncovering what the problem is, and things like that. Number two, you'll notice that some people are more artistically inclined than others. And that will inform how nice the rate card looks. Number three, some people have standard rate cards and other people have custom rate cards. And observing this has also shown me how some of them have been successful or unsuccessful. So, for instance, when I've interacted with the rate card was maybe we're looking for someone to hire for marketing, which is the most recent rate card I've seen or had a chance to look at. Or maybe I've asked someone, how much do you charge for this? And they share a rate card. So I want to share with you, some of those reflections, and ultimately by the end of this, you should be able to understand how to create one, what goes into it, what kinds are there, and which one is the best for you. Okay. Okay, so what is a rate card? Okay, I just have a basic definition here and I'm open to receiving any of yours. So a rate card is a document that lists the costs and details of an offered service. So just that, it's just a list, of the services you're going to offer, and it details how much this will cost. So why do you need a rate card? You need one because it will communicate what your rate is. Essentially, it has your rate. So it talks about the services you plan to offer, maybe how long it will take, and how much is that. So it's important that each one of us here is able to come up with a rate card. Okay, there's quite a few approaches with coming up with a rate card. And in this session, we'll focus on one because that's the one that I think I have most experience in and has been most successful for me. We have a custom rate card and a standard rate card. So a custom one is created for each client after going through a discovery process. So when you go through a discovery process, you get to learn the needs of the client or what problems they face. When this happens, you're in a position to ideate on a creative blend of services that can solve their problem. So ultimately, the custom nature of your rate card comes from how personalized it is for each of the clients. While a standard rate card is more of a price list, where the offering is the same for each client. So if you find that you typically have one kind of offering, maybe you're a photographer and you do headshots, corporate headshots, you'll have a price list that says, get 5 photos at this much, or get 2 hours of studio time at this much. So it's a standard rate. Everybody gets to pay that same rate regardless. And you find that this is most common in commodities or commodified services such as photography. So sometimes in that example that I've given, you find that photography becomes a commodified service in such a way that you can, buy a number of photos. Maybe they are your photos that were taken in a custom set, but you'll essentially buy that number of photos that other people can also buy, making it some sort of commodity. Okay, so we've seen types of a rate card, or maybe I should call it approaches. How can you approach it? There's a standard rate card, there's a custom rate card. And now we're looking at 2 kinds of individuals. We have an execution kind of person and a strategic kind of person. And here I'm calling them practitioners because this is a practice. It's a creative practice. So we have 2 types of practitioners. What I mean by a creative practice is maybe you're a graphic designer, that's your creative practice. Maybe you're a photographer, that's your practice. So I'll call you a practitioner here. So 2 kinds of practitioners. We have execution and strategic. execution. I want you to listen to these kinds of practitioners and think of where you lie. So execution focuses on the technical side of things. So they mostly want to receive a detailed brief that shows them where they come in, what's the detailed outcome that we require, and these are the deliverables. And we say, great, bring that to me, I'm here to execute. But we also have strategic. So where you find that you receive a problem, for instance, a client comes to you and says, I need a website. And then you encourage them to take a step back and ask them, okay, what would you like this website to do? And they begin to open up and say, I believe there's a client base that I haven't tapped into, and the website is a good opportunity. So from there, you begin to ask questions, and you learn that, well, okay, why haven't you tapped into this client base? Are there other aspects we need to explore so that when we arrive to the client, you already have a brand, you already have an image. And typically, this is the kinds of projects that I find myself in. It starts from one point where the person knows that this is the one problem you solve, and that point allows you to connect with them and explore the problem with them, because the problem is just a symptom, right? Let's figure out where is actually the cause of this problem that we're now experiencing. So as a strategic practitioner, you're able to think through these aspects. You're willing, you want to explore this with the client and find out, okay, you also have a problem in this area, it seems, right? So if we're to see this in an example of a mechanic, you know that sometimes you take your car and they find all the possible problems, and they kind of run a diagnostics, and you went in there for a flat tire and you find out that, my gosh, I need an oil change, I need to change my windshield wiper fluid, whatever, brake fluid, all of that is going bad. So basically you look at which kind of mechanic are you. Are you the one who solves the problem that came in, or are you the one who's interested in exploring the problem much further? Just 1 second. I see Paul has something to say.
No question.
Okay.
I was just asking about have you seen the comments?
I can't see in the comments.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
You can share those with me.
Someone is asking, does this apply to products as well?
Yeah. So in this session, we'll focus more on the custom service side, but what would apply to products is execution, or mostly where I said we have commodified services, such as photography here, where we have the standard rate. That's where it would mostly apply to standard products that already exist. In this session, though, what we want to learn is how to price a custom project, or how to come up with a custom rate card. So that will be our focus in this session. It will be most useful when you're coming up with a custom offering. So it's a creative blend of services. So not necessarily on the products, but if it's a product, then look more into the standard pricing. So when you're creating a custom rate card, there's a few things that you'll need. First, of course, you need to have gone through that discovery process, number 1. Number 2, you need to understand how you're going to price this. What's your pricing strategy? Are you going to go cost-based? Are you going to go value-based? Is it going to be based on the time that you spend? Or are you like me and you're going to do a blend of all three, where you think about how much time this will take, you also consider how much this would take from you, and you think about the profit you'd want on top of that. But beyond all of that, you also consider, okay, how much is this worth to this person, to their company, in terms of how much impact can I make, how much revenue can I generate for them. So you want to have like a clever blend of all three, but figure out what that is that will go into your rate card. To know how you plan to solve the client's problem. So of course you've gone through the discovery process. How do you plan on solving the problem? So for example, here I have the services and how you plan to package them. And I'll show you what that looks like in a moment. A sample of my rate card. And number 4, to be aware of the cost of what you plan to offer. So typically my offering would look like branding, a website, some photography, or some videography. I need to understand what each of those offerings cost so that I understand what it takes for me to offer that when you're coming up with that rate card. And then finally, create the rate card, capturing these aspects. So I have an example here of what a rate card looks like. Paul, if I open a drive link from this presentation, I think...
Just open.
Okay, you don't have access?
Don't have access to...
I think I did. So you can check on that side and... Okay, sure. All right, so I just want to share with you what this rate card looks like and show you how it captures all these steps that I've talked about so far. It's with the other one, so yeah. Okay, just 1 second. Okay, I think it's got children.
Maybe some elevator music. We'll back to you shortly.
Yeah, I hope you enjoyed the musical stylings of Paul as he gave us a chance here to give the access. So we're all set to continue?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I have a sample PDF here of what my rate card would look like. Okay. So here's a cover page. I typically start with a cover page, and this has my own styling, my own branding. It is my style language. So as you come up with your rate card, try to make sure that it's coherent with your style, cohesive with your style. So don't just copy mine. This has quite some consistency in terms of rate cards, in terms of my portfolio. This is basically my style, so I would encourage that you have yours. But here we have a cover page. I typically like to highlight the services I'll offer, and I highlight like the main service in the most contrasting color, and maybe the benefits or other secondary services, including the client's name, like Joseph, and what the service is, of course my logo. So typically my second page has the client's name and what I'm going to offer, and then a brief conversation here, just highlighting what we have gone through together, if it's the conversations we've had, what we've uncovered, what do you need, and that outlined in this document is some of these services. So from page 3 onwards, we start to just list briefly the identified problems, or identified needs, or where you plan to offer your services. So can be branding, like I said, that's typically where I come in. Pricing strategies, that's one of them, so a brief write-up on that, and then maybe personal support. This was just a sample, but that's what we're talking about. So next slide is pricing. So if you follow me, that I will encourage you to use 3 tiers or package your offering in 3 tiers. And you have model 1, or you can have tier 1, whatever you choose to call it. And then, have the 3, and then make sure you have a timeline for each of these. Let me close this. Okay. Yeah, make sure you have a timeline, what that can be, if these are sessions, or you typically go and do the work, what's that model like? And then make sure you have what's included in each of these packages and what each of them costs. Okay, yeah, and what each of these costs. So this essentially is the most crucial part that people just find themselves sending without the context, without building the case, without the process. But I'm just going to share with you why all of this is important. And then finally, I have my last page that has my details. Simple as that. Okay. Okay, here we go. Yeah. So simple as that. Here I just have just a statement. The success of the rate card depends on how and when you present it. As a designer, I dislike the lack of contrast here, so apologies. But yeah, the success of the rate card depends on how and when you present it, which brings me to some do's and don'ts. So this rate card, before we go into the do's and don'ts, this rate card, you have to take the client through the rate card. So what typically happens is, because you can be afraid to share this rate, it's daunting to talk about how much money you want or to share that. So what we end up doing is typing up a document and sending it and hiding behind that, hoping that when they open it, they won't be too shocked. It will be within their ballpark. But that can be what we do. We have to talk through it. I don't send a rate card without having first taken the client through it myself. In fact, I might send the rate card even a day after. Potentially they had some changes they needed that I am willing to make to the rate card. They had some suggestions, sure, and that gives me time. But yeah, how you present it and when is crucial. Back to the do's and don'ts. Do include the initial process, initial insights from the conversation, and a list of your recommended services with a brief description of each. I think you've seen that in action. Yeah, I think that's something that you've seen. So on the rate card, you saw that I had my services that I wanted to offer and a short description of all of those. And then number 2, create a visually appealing rate card if you can. So a curious thing that I've seen is, after receiving a bunch of rate cards, you'll find that some people put zero effort into making it look good. But the content in the rate card is, is strategic. You can see that there's been some thinking, there's a plan. I'm interested in this. It looks like they're going to solve my problem. But it doesn't look good. On the other hand, I've seen people who've put in an effort to make it look good, but there's not much in there. Now think of someone who's put quite some effort into the strategy and the content of it, but they're not that good in making it look nice. So you end up maybe having a mostly ugly presentation. So it becomes distracting. In that case, you'd rather have a skeleton of a rate card than something that looks like maybe it was done by a child who might not understand what your branding needs to look like. So if that's not your strength, this is not the time to learn that. When you're sending the rate card, it's not the time to learn how to design it, but focus on what can make it successful, which is the contents of that rate card. Okay, number 3, always price in tiers. I will keep sharing this. This is what has worked for me. Paul has been there and he has seen it work as well. And if you don't believe me, ask him. Though I don't know why you would not believe me if you haven't tried. But always price in tiers. And I have quite a few videos talking about this, but I'll go over it just briefly. Make sure that you have 3 models. You have model 1, 2, and 3, or tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. And in tier 1, you want it to be useful, but not enough. In tier 2, you want it to be just perfect. And in tier 3, you want it to be overboard. You want it to be overkill. So typically, the pricing is called Goldilocks pricing. And just from the name, you can tell why. That there's a tier that's just right. Kind of like the porridge or the chair or the bed that Goldilocks had. So you need to kind of steer them into this middle tier that's just right. And I've shared the benefits of that. So please check that out on my Instagram. Don't send your rate card without taking the client through it. I've already said this. And this could be the reason for the success or failure of your rate card. Make sure you talk the client through it as you share your screen or as you show it to them if it's an in-person meeting. Talk them through it. Tell them, remember when you shared this with me, these are some of the thoughts we've had. Let them know that this is more of a proposal than set in stone and that you're willing to negotiate. Which brings me to number 5, don't give a discount. Plan ahead for the discount. So I've written an article on this. And I'll make sure that we share the link to that article. But what I mentioned in the article is plan ahead to give your client a discount. So let's say you wanted to charge 50,000. Then put it at 65 so that you give them a chance to talk you down to 50. In that case, everyone's happy. Everyone feels like they got something out of it. You didn't have to compromise. You didn't have to go at a loss. But you thought ahead and considered, okay, this is what I will add on top for the deposit. So some people might have some thoughts on that. Why are you being really cunning? That's not the point of a deposit. You can go into that, or you can work on getting a successful rate card, is what I'll say on that. And typically I like to prepare. I like to give people a chance to talk me down. And some people will not talk you down. So see it that way as well. It's still your price, but this is your manageable window where you allow people to talk you down. Yeah, and then finally, learn what you need to learn and adjust. So every time you send a rate card, you learn something new. You learn who not to send it to. You learn when not to go and start to make a rate card. You'll also learn a bit about yourself. Am I an execution kind of practitioner? Am I a strategic kind of practitioner? What's my style? Do I just have a standard rate card and when someone reaches out to me, I have something to share? Or is what I have a template and each time someone reaches out, we have a discovery journey together that enriches what goes into my custom rate card. So we've said review and iterate, and all the best with your rate card. I think that's really all we're going to cover today. We have 1 minute, so I'll give Paul a chance to look through any of the questions if there are.
Yeah. Well, you answered the question on the products. What did you mean by a skeleton of a rate card?
Yeah, what did I mean by a skeleton of a rate card? So, well, I'm a designer, so that makes sense to me. But you know how when we come up with our carousels, I talk about let's work on the content first before we put it into the carousel. That's quite useful. So what if we posted just the content? That becomes a skeleton of our carousel. So in this case where you have a rate card, you'll just have text, probably a bunch of screenshots thrown in there, maybe a very rough looking table, no start page, no end page, no contacts. It's very rough draft of a strategy that's shared with you. and it still works. It's still a rate card. You can just put your amount there. I've still seen it work. But what doesn't work sometimes is when you have good content and you try to style it. So it's not a skeleton. You try to style it. But because your styling is bad, it throws people off. So in that case, you'd rather just have a skeleton. Since your strategy and the content of your rate card is good and it's going to sell, then don't add any other distractions. If that visual ability is not your skill, when you're creating a rate card, is not the time to learn that skill.
That's true.
Yeah, so that's what I meant.
So we have a question from Renee. If you really want to work with a specific client, but their budget is way below your rate card, is it a disadvantage to me to add the project to my portfolio?
Okay. Okay. Let's find the question here.
Renee.
Yeah, I see Renee, but I don't see the question you're asking.
So, if you really want to work with a specific client, but their budget is way below your rate card, is it a disadvantage to me to add the project to my portfolio? So I guess she's asking, should I just take the project? Should I just do the project to add it to my portfolio?
Yeah. So when you think about the level you're in, if adding things to your portfolio is your main focus, then pricing and price shouldn't get in your way. So by the time you're coming up with the rate card, we're assuming that this is something that you're already doing. But we also have beginners who would like to add to their portfolio. So when you have a motivation that's outside of getting paid, then you can think about what that looks for you. So for instance, here we have someone whose budget is way lower than my possible rate. That tells me that we are not a fit. But another area of being a fit is the kind of work they have for me to do and the kind of work I'm looking to do can make us a fit. So sometimes the value is in the opportunity. And when you see that, then you think about making that clear to them. I'll do this because I want to include this in my portfolio, so I need your permission to go ahead and I'll do it at your rate. Another possible thing is to lower, to minimize the scope to match their budget, because either way, some people will pay you even as you learn, because you'll still give that deliverable and there'll still be an output. But you notice that if you're a beginner, how you price should also reflect that, because you charge more by your ability to take care of risk, by your ability to create more value, and by your expertise. So if you're looking for things on your portfolio, then likely you're not able to charge a premium price yet. So at that point, because like I've said, charging a premium price comes with mitigating risk. It comes with your level of expertise and your years of experience, and it also comes with the value that you can bring. So typically, if you're looking for portfolio projects, you're also looking to see what kind of value you can share. So given that these are not things you're able to do now, that means you should be much more flexible, but also identify what's your minimum level. So identify that, think about how you can reduce the scope so that it still is good in your portfolio, but you're not sleeping hungry. Maybe think about an arrangement. Can they take care of most of the costs, if that's the case? If the budget is too low, can they make sure that your transport and food, or that your Wi-Fi and electricity is taken care of? Those are some of the areas where you balance it out. So the value comes back for you in having something that you can share, in having a space that you can experiment or you can learn, essentially making you charge a little less. So the problem kind of solves itself, I would say.
Okay, we have another question from Mohammed. How overboard should tier 3 be?
Tier 3 should be so overboard. If someone looks at it, they just like run away and run back to tier 2 and, okay, what did tier 2 have? Let me look at that again. So tier 3 should just be obviously overkill. at first glance, you look at all the things and you realize maybe for a much larger company, that's not what I'm looking for now. So an example, if I'm looking for doorbell security, tier 1 would be maybe I have a parrot that I keep outside, and the parrot will talk, and let me know that someone's there. Tier 2 is maybe Ring, right? The doorbell that has a camera, it works, I can see it from my phone and all that. Tier 3 is maybe 5G state-of-the-art surveillance that goes to, you can surveil me from space, and we get the body heat of any insect that passes in front of my door. And
The
there's
insects don't have body heat.
Yeah, but because it's so overboard, I'm going to get the body heat of the insect that passed outside and generate a report which will analyze generally how much activity happens outside my door. That's way overboard. So already when you think about that, you're like, Ring sounds much more like what I need. The parrot will work, but it's just not enough, not in this day and age. I need to be in the middle. So that's basically how you do it.
Okay, we have another question from, he'll tell me if I said his name right. Kilo si. I can't do the click. Kilo sinkobo. Kilo sinkobo. You'll tell me if I'm right. I try.
Please tell us.
Please tell us. But
he almost tore open his tongue doing that. He really tried.
I really tried. So, what if a client wants something on tier 1, 2, and 3, in a way creating new demands? I think he's asking about like the tier 4 thing you do.
Yeah. So like you've heard the tier 4 thing I do. So this is a common outcome, that sometimes you've presented 3 tiers. The client wants something in tier 1, a bit of tier 2, and maybe one thing from tier 3. And that's normal. It should be an outcome that you can anticipate. That's the word I was looking for. So as you anticipate this, that's fine. This process is also about co-creating. So you can co-create this rate card with your client and give them a chance to get back to you and tell you, okay, this I think is what would work. I want this from tier 1, this from tier 2, and this from tier 3, and this is my budget. So what will help you is, after you've shared the initial rate card, you have the 3 tiers, all of them had their price, they sort of position you and they sort of set the expectation that this is the general cost of what it's going to look like. And of course they imagine that the range or the average is right there in the middle, which is tier 2. So they'll work with that as their budget, or something around that range, tier 2 as their budget, and they'll share with you those services. And this is exactly what I talk about on Instagram, that you have someone picking out the services from the tiers that you offer, as opposed to someone picking out the practitioner from the rate cards that they received, right? So they're in your rate card, they're interested in you, they're looking at your offering, and now they're thinking, okay, these are the services that I want within this offering. Where if you just send the rate card, the client will sit back and look at a bunch of rate cards and maybe pick you. Out of 20, the odds are 1 of 20, and I don't know how good those are. I'm not really the best at math, but most likely you get 30 rate cards. Even if you get 2, you don't want the odds to be 50-50. You want the odds to be 100%, because the only odds are, we're looking at the exact services that they will pick. What are the odds that they'll pick branding? I think 100%, right? Because they'll pick you either way. That's what happens typically. Anticipate that there'll be a model 4 or tier 4 required.
Yeah, I think we've got all the questions.
All right. Yeah, thank you so much for making it. We've gone a little overtime just to answer the questions, but I'm happy to do that. Overtime by 10 minutes, so that's not so bad. Maybe we open for questions 10 minutes earlier next time, but we're also learning. Like I said, this is the first session, and we're here to do continuous learning and provide continuous value. So make sure to join Creatives Anonymous WhatsApp group. I'll make sure that link is shared as well. Reach out to us. We almost always reply. Talk to us on Instagram and on WhatsApp. And all of that information will be made available. Most of it is on my Instagram bio. The WhatsApp group is open to anyone to join. And it's amazing. Thank you so much for joining. I'll just read out the names in the chat. Karen Reiter, Nikki Rax, Tammy, Mohammed, Renee, okay, Mkolisi Nkobo.
Mkolisi.
I tried. What?
Mkolisi.
Yeah, Mkolisi Nkobo is how I'll say that. But send me an audio correcting me. I welcome that. Crystal, thanks for joining. Motika is here as well.
Yeah, I think it hasn't updated on your Alfred Motika.
We have Motika. Thanks for joining. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday, and I hope you have a great weekend. I hope this Conduit piece is the piece you needed. Bye, and have a great weekend.